At 76, his hands shook over the piano keys. Not from age, from fear. Steve Perry, the voice that sold 100 million records, the man behind Don't Stop Believin', sat alone in a studio, staring at a song he hadn't touched in 25 years. Nobody called him. Nobody pushed him. He came on his own. And that was the terrifying part. The last time he sang this melody, he lost everything that mattered. The woman he loved, the person he was. The silence that followed wasn't retirement, it was survival. Now, at 76, something pulled him back to that exact song. What happened in that room will change how you hear his voice forever. Stay with us, because what this song reveals, nobody has told you yet. He vanished at the top February 1st, 1987. Anchorage, Alaska. Steve Perry walked off the stage after Journey's last show of the Raised on Radio tour and never came back. No farewell concert, no goodbye to the fans, no explanation given to the band. Within weeks, phone calls went unanswered. Letters sat unopened. The man who had filled arenas for a decade simply disappeared. People could not make sense of it. Journey was at the height of their power. Don't Stop Believin' was everywhere on radio, in films, in restaurants, in the background of everyday American life. Why would anyone walk away from all of that? Industry insiders whispered about a hip surgery Perry had been avoiding. Others said the band was quietly breaking apart from the inside. And fans demanded answers that never came. The truth was both simpler and sadder than any rumor. Steve Perry was exhausted not from the music, but from being Steve Perry. Every night for a decade, he had walked on stage carrying the weight of 1 million people's expectations. Every note had to be perfect. Every performance had to match the last one, or better it. There was no room to have a bad night, no room to be human. Just the lights, the crowd, and the voice that everyone owned a piece of except him. Backstage, after shows, Perry would sit alone in silence for long stretches. Not celebrating, not talking, just trying to remember who he was when the noise stopped. By 1987, he could not remember anymore. So he left. For more than 2 decades, Perry lived like a ghost. He moved between small towns where no one recognized him. He grew a beard, wore plain clothes, and became invisible. But he avoided music completely, could not listen to Journey songs on the radio, could not watch old performances. Every melody carried a memory he was not ready to face. He attended a few Journey concerts in secret, standing in the very back of the arena. Just another face in a dark crowd. Watching his replacement sing words he had written. He felt no anger watching that, only relief. Someone else carried that weight now. Someone else stood under those lights. Once, a friend invited him to dinner. And Don't Stop Believin' came on in the restaurant. Perry stood up immediately and walked outside. His friend found him in the parking lot, leaning against a car with his eyes closed, breathing slowly. Perry later admitted, "Hearing my own voice felt like opening a wound. The music brought everything back, things I had spent years trying to leave behind." A grocery store clerk in a small Northern California town once looked at him carefully. "Are you?" she started. Perry just shook his head gently and kept walking. He had become very good at disappearing. The years became a decade. The decade became 2. 1990 turned into 2000. The world moved on, but something was still unfinished. And deep down, Perry knew it. The silence was never peace. It was just postponed pain. The promise he could not keep. In 2011, Steve Perry met Dr. Kelly Nash at a cancer support group. She was a psychologist and breast cancer survivor, strong, warm, and completely uninterested in his fame. Kelly did not ask about Journey. She did not want an autograph. She just wanted to know the real him, the one who had been hiding for over 20 years. Slowly, carefully, Perry let her in. That alone said everything. This was a man who had spent 2 decades keeping people at a careful distance, not out of coldness, but out of self-protection. He had learned that closeness came with cost, that letting someone in meant eventually losing them, or leaving them, or watching the distance grow until nothing was left. But Kelly was different. She did not need him to be the voice of a generation. She did not light up when his name appeared on a playlist. She saw a quiet man in his 60s who carried something heavy and had been carrying it alone for far too long. And she simply sat with him without pressure, without expectation. For the first time in decades, music began returning to his life not as a performance, just as something natural. Kelly would catch him humming while cooking dinner or tapping rhythms on the steering wheel. She never made a big deal of it. She just smiled. And in that smile, Perry found something he had not felt since long before 1987. Permission. Permission to be someone who loved music without being destroyed by it. Permission to hum a melody without it pulling him back into pain. Permission to just exist, simply and quietly, and with song as a small part of his day, rather than the entire weight of his identity. Those years with Kelly were, by every account, the most peaceful of Perry's adult life. No stadiums, no interviews, no expectations. Just 2 people who had both survived difficult things, finding steadiness in each other. But their time together was painfully short. Kelly's cancer returned aggressive and unforgiving. Perry watched the woman who had brought him back to life, slowly losing her own. And he sat beside her through treatments, through the hard days, through the quiet ones. He held her hand through all of it. As her health declined, she told Perry something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. "Don't disappear again," she said, her voice weak but certain. "Promise me you'll sing. Promise me you won't hide anymore." Perry held her hand and promised. He meant it completely and had no idea how to honor it. Kelly passed away in December 2012, where the house went quiet in a way Perry had never experienced before. Not the chosen quiet of someone running from pain. This was different. This was the silence left behind when someone who truly saw you is suddenly gone. And Perry was left alone with a promise he did not know how to keep, and a silence heavier than any he had known before. This time, there was nowhere left to disappear to. The song that finally broke him, one quiet afternoon, months after Kelly's passing, to Steve Perry did something he had avoided for over 2 decades. He walked to his old record collection. His hands were unsteady as he pulled out a Journey album. He placed it on the turntable. The needle dropped. The opening piano notes of Faithfully filled the room. Perry had not meant to stay long, just a few seconds, a small test to see if he could handle it. But the moment that melody began, his body refused to move. Every word hits differently now. His younger voice sang with such confidence, such certainty. Perry remembered recording that vocal. 3rd take, and everyone in the studio had applauded. But that confidence belonged to a different man. A man who still believed the world was simple enough to hold on to. "I'm forever yours, faithfully." That line shattered him. Sitting there alone, tears running down his face, Perry realized something he had never let himself admit. He had been faithful to all the wrong things. Faithful to fear, faithful to silence, faithful to a kind of protection that had really just been a prison. The song reached its climax. His younger voice soared on the recording, hitting notes he was not sure he could reach anymore. And something inside him broke open, not in a destructive way, but the way a dam finally breaks after holding too much for too long. He sat for several minutes after the record ended. His face was wet. His chest ached. But something else stirred beneath all of that pain, something he had not felt in nearly 30 years. Hope. Perry stood up slowly and walked to his piano, a beautiful instrument that had sat untouched for years, collecting dust. He lifted the cover. His fingers trembled as he reached toward the keys. He pressed one note, uncertain, trembling. Raw, but alive. That single note, imperfect, shaking, real, was the beginning of Steve Perry coming home to himself. The kid from Hanford, 1977. Before the arenas, before the sold-out tours, before millions of people knew his name, Steve Perry was just a kid from Hanford, a small, quiet town in Central California, where nobody was famous and nobody expected to be. He grew up surrounded by Motown records. His mother sang, his father sang. Gospel music played in the house on Sunday mornings, and Perry absorbed all of it naturally. He had no music school training, no industry connections, and he just had a voice and a feeling that music was the only language that made complete sense to him. By 1977, Journey was already a working band. Strong musicians, real talent, but missing the one thing that would push them from good to unforgettable. They needed a voice that did not just sing the notes, but made people feel something they could not explain. Steve Perry walked into that audition and changed everything in under a minute. Neil Schon, Journey's lead guitarist, he later recalled, "Within 30 seconds, every person in that room knew." Perry's voice spanned 4 octaves, but it was not the range that stopped people. It was the emotion packed inside every word. He did not perform songs. He confessed them. Journey's first album with Perry, Infinity, was released in 1978. Songs like Wheel in the Sky and Lights were not just radio hits, they felt personal. The album sold over 1 million copies in its first year. A new era had begun. Fame, perfection, and a love lost. By 1979, Journey was touring 10 months out of every year. The crowds got bigger. The expectations got heavier. And Perry began disappearing not from the spotlight, but from himself. In the studio, he would redo a single vocal take 20, 30 times, chasing a sound only he could hear. Sessions that should have lasted 3 hours stretched into 12. The band would finish and go home. Perry stayed behind, alone, trying one more take. Then another. Then came 1981. A Journey released Escape. Don't Stop Believin' became more than a song, it became a cultural moment. The album sold over 9 million copies in the United States alone. Journey was now one of the biggest bands on earth. But inside all of that noise, Perry felt something growing quieter. While Journey conquered the world, his heart belonged to one person, Sherry Swafford. She was not chasing fame. She was an esthetician, living a quiet life in California. And that was exactly what Perry needed. They met in the early 1980s. Sherry did not see the rock star. She saw the man underneath, the one who loved simple dinners and evenings away from the chaos. In 1984, Perry released Oh Sherry, a love letter, and an apology wrapped into one. The music video showed them together, happy. Behind the scenes, they were already falling apart. By 1986, it was over. No dramatic fight, no public scandal. They're just two people who loved each other but could not bridge the gap between his world and hers. Perry never fully recovered. The light in his eyes changed. His smile became something he wore instead of something he felt. And Faithfully, the song Jonathan Cain had written on a tour bus in 1983, became his ghost. I'm forever yours, faithfully. When Perry sang those words, they were not just lyrics. No, they were a confession to someone he was always leaving behind. That song followed him for the next 30 years. He left, and nobody knew why. February 1st, 1987. The last show ended in Anchorage, Alaska. Perry walked off the stage, and within weeks, he was unreachable. No statement, no goodbye, just silence. His mother called regularly. "You were born to sing," she would tell him. Perry would smile sadly and change the subject. Even she could not reach the part of him that had shut down. The years became a decade. The decade became two. 1990 turned into 2000. The world kept moving. But the song he had left behind, Faithfully, Don't Stop Believin', all of it never stopped waiting for him. After Journey's Raised on Radio tour ended in February 1987, Steve Perry did something no one expected. He disappeared. No farewell concert, no press release, no explanation. The last show was in Anchorage, Alaska, on February 1st, 1987. Perry walked off the stage, packed his bags, and within weeks, he was gone. Phone calls went unanswered. Letters sat unopened. The man who had spent a decade filling arenas simply vanished. People speculated endlessly. Was it his voice? Creative differences? A health issue? Industry insiders whispered about a hip surgery he had been putting off. Others claimed the band was breaking from the inside. The rumors never stopped. The truth was both simpler and sadder. Steve Perry was exhausted from being Steve Perry. For more than 2 decades, he lived like a quiet ghost. He moved between small towns where nobody recognized him. He grew a beard, wore plain clothes, and became invisible. He avoided music entirely, could not listen to Journey songs on the radio, could not watch old performances without something tightening in his chest. He came back, but not the same. In 2018, the music world received news that almost no one had expected. Steve Perry was releasing a new album. After 24 years of silence, the voice that had defined a generation was returning, not with arena anthems or soaring high notes designed to impress. The album was called Traces, and it was something far more honest than anything Perry had ever released before. Quiet songs, vulnerable songs, songs about love, loss, time passing, and learning to live again. Critics praised the craftsmanship, but fans heard something deeper. A man who had survived his own story and come out the other side, still standing, still himself. Perry looked different in interviews. Silver-haired, wearing glasses, older in every visible way. But his eyes carried something they never had before. A stillness, a peace that had clearly been hard-earned. "I didn't come back because I missed the stage," he told one interviewer. "I came back because I missed feeling alive." Songs like No Erasing and No More Crying carried the full weight of everything he had been through. His voice had changed, softer in places, weathered by time. But somehow, that made it more powerful, not less. This was not the voice of perfection anymore. It was the voice of truth. When journalists asked about the years of silence, Perry did not flinch. Those years were not wasted. I needed every single one of them to become who I am now. And he made a few quiet appearances, including a surprise visit to a Journey concert. He did not perform. He stood in the back of the arena, just another face in the crowd, and watched thousands of people sing words he had written decades ago. Afterward, he said it moved him to tears all over again. Hearing those people sing those lyrics back, that reminded me why I did any of this in the first place. Music is not about being perfect. It is about being true. At 76, Steve Perry did not return to reclaim fame. He returned to keep a promise. A promise made to a woman who believed in him when he had stopped believing in himself. A promise that cost him everything to make and everything to keep. The song that once broke him open became the very thing that brought him home. Some wounds do not heal with time. They heal when you finally stop running from them. If this story moved something in you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to come back to yourself. And drop a comment below what song has ever broken you open. Stay faithful to your own journey.